All righty, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome in to the channel. Black and gold breakdown, talking everything Pittsburgh Steelers. And I would say I'm not one for victory laps, but that would be insincere because I enjoy being right. And right now, it looks like I'm very much being proven right on the front of the Pittsburgh Steelers and George Pickens. So let's get into it real quick. Back when the Pittsburgh Steelers traded for DK Metcalf, I came on here. I went on different shows, podcasts, radio, TV, whatever it may be, wrote about it a lot, and said, I fully expect them to trade George Pickens because DK Metcalf and George Pickens are redundant of one another. They are basically, for all intents and purposes, the same player, where they don't have great route trees. They don't have great release packages. They're not like true X receivers. They're more Y receivers. Great talents. You can get you the deep ball, haul in a 50-50 ball and get you big yards. But when it comes to, needing a real, X receiver, they aren't quite that, but they are both very similar to one another. Everybody, a lot of people on this very channel, when I suggested that, is, oh man, you can't trade George Pickens. They're not going to trade Pickens. They're not going to do that. And I said, okay, just wait. And while they haven't traded George Pickens yet, it has been reported by Fox NFL insider Jordan Schultz, friend of this channel, by the way, Jordan Schultz, shout out to Schultz, that the Pittsburgh Steelers are trying to trade George Pickens. Here's the exact quote from Schultz himself on his NFL Confidential piece ahead of the NFL draft. It reads, and I quote, George Pickens is one intriguing trade name to watch. Pittsburgh has taken and made calls on the talented receiver who's now extension eligible. After paying Metcalf, league sources are skeptical the Steelers will pay two receivers. Then he adds that an AFC GM says that Pickens is more available than people think. Green Bay has been serious, and they're not the only ones. So, again, I love being right because I was right about this. As soon as they traded for DK Metcalf, I said, probably going to trade Pickens. And a bunch of people said, no. And now look at this. Not only are they taking calls, as Schultz pointed out, they are making the calls. They are actively calling teams saying, hey, you want George? And not only are the Green Bay Packers a serious team to watch in this instance, according to Jordan Schultz, but others are interested. Now, whoever that may be, I don't know. It's easy to speculate on what teams would be. If you look at top teams that are either contenders in need of a receiver, or teams that are, whether they were playoff teams last year, but not really in the contender spot, or teams that have improved this offseason and could be a receiver away from taking that next step. It's easy to speculate on which teams could be interested. So teams, like Green Bay, obviously that makes sense because they have a bunch of, C+ guys that none of them are real game breakers. And so adding a George Pickens there, yeah, like putting him with Jordan Love opposite of Jaden Reed, that makes a lot of sense. And I could see them wanting to do that. And if you're the Steelers, if you can get a third-round pick, the Packers have pick number 87. If you can get pick number 87 in exchange for Pickens, that's a deal I would take. I know a lot of people are like, if they don't get a second-round pick for Pickens, they shouldn't trade him. They aren't going to get a second-round pick for Pickens. If DK Metcalf went for a second-round pick, George won't. DK Metcalf is better than George. I think the best that they'll get for him is a third. And if you can get pick number 87 for Pickens, that's a deal that you take. So if Pickens does get dealt during the draft, which we've seen the Steelers trade receivers during the draft before. Hello, Martavis Bryant. So definitely not unprecedented for the Steelers to make a move like this. And if they can get pick 87 for him, or in addition to that, if they can get pick 87 for Pickens and then send back a 4th or 5th for Romeo Doubs, I think that is as fair a trade as you can get. Because as I've said a million times, both on here and written work, they are not extending Pickens. And if you're not going to extend him, then you may as well get something for him. And it looks like they are actively trying to do that by potentially trading him to Green Bay. And again, other teams being interested as well. And I'm trying to put my finger on who else could be interested. They wouldn't trade him within the division, I don't think. It's not completely unprecedented. We see in-division trades happen. Maybe Buffalo. But with the Bills, they seem so much like a team that is like built on culture. And I don't know if they would add a guy like George Pickens based on that. New England, I think, would make sense. They already acquired Stephon Diggs, but I think at this point in his career, he's better off transitioning into being more of a slot guy. But if you can also bring in George Pickens, by the way, Stephon Diggs and George Pickens, that would be quite the dynamic. But if there is anybody who will handle it, it's Mike Vrabel. And if you can get a deep threat for Drake May along with Stephon Diggs, New England becomes even more interesting than they already are. If you're a team like Atlanta, they already have Drake London, though. And again, I think that Drake London and George Pickens kind of do similar things, so that would be kind of redundant. If you're a team like Tennessee, that would make sense. You're about to draft Cam Ward. You have no receivers. Calvin Ridley, very quietly, like 31 years old, ain't going to be there forever. So if you can trade a 3rd for George Pickens, by the way, and if you're the Steelers in that situation, Tennessee's 3rd is basically just a late 2nd. That's probably the best that you would get for him. Let me check on what the Titans have in terms of draft capital, though, because I don't want to be talking out of both sides of my mouth. Let's be sure of what they have real quick. So the Titans, my mistake, they don't have a 3rd round pick. The highest one that they would have is 103, but I wouldn't trade them for a 4th. I think a 3rd is where I would settle in. But if you can get pick 103 and pick 141, so a 4th and a 5th for them, maybe you do that, or a 4th and a 6th, maybe. Or if you want to strengthen your core of picks next year to help you trade up for a quarterback, maybe you do a 4th this year and maybe a conditional 3rd next year, something like that, or even 2-4. I don't know. But, and again, if you're just joining, Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports reporting. Let me get it pulled up here, the exact quote. And I quote, George Pickens is one intriguing name to watch. Pittsburgh has taken and made calls on the talented receiver. So again, not only are the Steelers picking up the phone to answer calls, they are actively calling teams saying, hey, you want George? We'll trade him. And so many people on here, when I suggested it as soon as they traded for DK Metcalf, like, oh, come on, they're not going to trade Pickens. Really? Okay. This is just getting another step closer to proving me right. So on top of this, it also does make the possibility of the Steelers taking a receiver early a lot more likely. Especially if they can still trade back in the 1st round. If you can trade back to like 30 with the Bills, if they want to move up for like a corner, and you can still get like a Luther Burden, or even if you want to take a Jaden Higgins there, that's fine. But I would expect them to take, or even if they're sitting at 21 and Matthew Golden's there, you take Matthew Golden. He becomes your X, while DK Metcalf is your Y. And then you trade Pickens to Green Bay for a 3rd. Shake hands, and that's that. Now, even with Schultz's reporting, that doesn't guarantee that the Steelers are going to trade Pickens. But even the mere suggestion of maybe they should warranted so many people being like, oh, like clutching their pearls for suggesting that they should trade George Pickens. And now it is confirmed by Jordan Schultz that they have both taken and made calls about trading him away. People are commenting. Let's get into it. Steel 43. GP is not going to be okay with his targets anyway this year. They should trade him now before the blow up because it's coming. Try to tell fans it's coming. And again, George Pickens and DK Metcalf do the same thing. You can't just run 4 verts every play and hope that it works out. You got to have somebody who's going to do the underneath and intermediate eating, which they don't really have a guy who can do that consistently right now. Well, Honcho, here we go again. Do you not just listen to Omar Khan, and did you sit here and go through a whole season begging for another receiver and the media killed us for it? Yeah, I did listen to Omar Khan. Omar Khan also sat there and said that they believed in Kenny Pickett before they traded him. And again, this isn't just me talking out of my ass. This is Jordan Schultz. Again, Fox NFL insider Jordan Schultz saying they have taken and made calls. They aren't just answering people who are calling. They're doing the calling. They're trying to trade him. So don't shoot the messenger or be mad at me because I said it and now I'm being proven correct. Do the Steelers not like Shedeur Sanders? Every sportsbook seems to really believe that that's the direction they're heading in. It could all be a smokescreen, but if they do take Sanders, I'm not going to be mad about it per se. I'll have a little bit of concern based on just like character stuff. But I think that when it comes to him, a lot of people like Peter Schrager mocked him to go to the Steelers. I think Ari Myrov mocked him to go to the Steelers. So a lot of people seem to believe that's where he's heading. If he does, that's, we'll strap in and I'll, hope that he succeeds. Like I said, I'll have a little bit of concerns just about the character stuff, but definitely will root for him to succeed. What is George Pickens' trade value? Said it earlier. I think that his trade value is a third at most. DK Metcalf went for a second. I don't think George Pickens is quite at that level. Plus, you got to take in the diva factor, which is going to tax you a little bit. So I think that a third is at most what they'll get for him. Which, by the way, if they let him leave in free agency, they would get like a 3rd or 4th round comp for him anyway. So if you're going to do it, just do it now. Draft a receiver to be that X. And again, this is a good receiver class to do it. If you want to take Matthew Golden, if you want to take Luther Burden, you want to take Emeka Egbuka, you want to maybe take Eli Manor, whatever you want to do, there's guys there that can do it. And again, they made it very evident they weren't going to extend Pickens as soon as they traded for Metcalf and extended Metcalf. These guys do the exact same thing receiver-wise. They aren't going to pay both of them. Might as well get something for them. Would Steelers take a 4th rounder in 2026 for George Pickens? I don't think so. No. I wouldn't. I would be hesitant to trade him for a 4th rounder this year because he's more talented than just to go for a 4th rounder. But no, 4th in 2026, I don't think that happens. No. But again, if you're just joining, NFL insider for Fox Sports, Jordan Schultz, reported today in his NFL Confidential piece just ahead of the NFL draft that the Steelers have, and I quote, taken and made calls on George Pickens. The Green Bay Packers were named as a team that are seriously interested, and they are not the only ones, according to Schultz. So I would fully expect Pickens to be dealt. Even if it's not during draft weekend, I won't be shocked in the slightest if it's before the season starts. It could be before draft, during draft weekend. But I said it going back to when they traded for Metcalf. They're going to trade Pickens. Because Pickens and Metcalf do the same thing. both deep ball receivers who don't have, X receiver abilities in terms of release packages and route trees. So I fully expect Pickens to be dealt. You're wrong. Pickens will be extended. I will bet you anything that you want that the Steelers will not extend George Pickens. It's certainly not going to happen. And that's not just me saying that either. Plenty of people who are closer to the team than I are saying, yeah, there's no chance they're going to extend him. He's talented, but we know the headache that comes with that. They aren't extending him. So now we wait, kind of. Because I'm going to be very intrigued to see if they do something this weekend with him. Because if Green Bay's serious, then that's something worth looking at, especially because, again, they have the 87th pick. That would be good value to get in return for Pickens. Still going to be good players on the board there. If you want to try to get a running back and, say another defensive tackle in the third round, you can do that. Or if you want to double up and take, another receiver and a running back, whatever you want to do, if you can have pick 83 and 87, that's a good thing to have in your pocket. It has less to do with him and DK being the same type of receiver and more with him being immature. I think both of them are factors when it comes to this. I think if they weren't so similar, they would be willing to try it for at least a year. Yeah, look, maybe they still are. Obviously nothing has, been done yet. But the fact that it's being reported that, hey, they're trying to trade Pickens, like, I would expect something to be done. But even if they weren't the same type of receiver, George still had, the same immaturity issues, I think that they would be more willing to try it for a year, or at least start the year trying it. But I do think that if I had to guess, like, if you said gun to my head, is he going to be traded this weekend? Maybe. If I had to say yes or no, I'd probably say yes. Just because, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. But if he's not traded this weekend, certainly doesn't mean that he won't be at some point this offseason. Marjo says he's not going to be traded. Okay. That's fine. I've said it since March. Hey, they're probably going to trade him. A lot of people wanted to say they aren't going to. That's fine. I'll keep these receipts, though. Whenever they do, I'll be sure to come back. And I'll take my victory lap because I'm not above that. So Jordan Schultz is our GM, or is Omar? LOL, literally did a press conference. Yeah, no kidding, dude. Is this George Pickens' burner? What the hell's happening? Yeah, no kidding. And again, he also said, we're not going to trade Kenny Pickett. We're very confident in Kenny Pickett. Yeah, no kidding. And then they traded him. The NFL draft is peak lying season for NFL general managers. Remember a few years ago, whenever Cliff Kingsbury got hired by the Cardinals and said that Josh Rosen's our guy, and then a week later they drafted Kyler Murray? Yeah, me too. Just because a general manager says something definitely does not make it true. So I don't know what else to say to this. I think that we found out that George Pickens watches the show. That's exciting. So just because the general manager says something certainly does not make it true. Absolutely not. Especially around this type of year, or around this time of year, where lying is as common as, rumors and things of that nature. Like, GMs and coaches are going to lie. Do it all the time. least in the wide receiver class week this year. Wide receiver is very strong this year, which again is why I think that this makes it even more likely that they take a wide receiver early. If you're sitting there at 21 and Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka are there, and you can take one of them to be the starter opposite of Metcalf, guys who are very different, rather than George and DK, who are very similar, then yeah, you do that. That makes sense. And they can even circle back later on in the draft and take another receiver if they want to. I think they have confidence in Calvin Austin, who proved himself as a viable slot option. I don't think Roman Wilson is going to turn out to be anything. Just my guess. If they weren't comfortable enough to, put him in a game when he got healthy with that receiving core, like that's a little bit troubling. So, and from what I saw from Roman Wilson during minicamp and OTAs, like he wasn't doing anything to take my breath away, which again, of course, it's minicamp and OTAs, that comes with a little bit of grain of salt. But there were other guys that certainly were like, oh, okay, there's something there with, guys like Beanie Bishop, who ended up, starting games as an undrafted free agent, or Corey Trice, who had a really nice summer. So, like, you can tell some guys are going to set themselves apart. And then you can also tell, okay, that guy's probably got a ways to go. So, good receiver class this year, though. Even if they found a way to get back up into the second round, guys like Jaden Higgins, Jaden Noel, Kyle Williams from Washington State. There's plenty of guys that are. There's a good receiver class. Jalen Royals from Utah State. I think that this is a pretty good, a good receiver class, in my opinion. Another Pickens isn't getting traded. Okay. A lot of you in here. I'll make sure to keep all of these. I'll make sure to keep them all. And again, if he doesn't get traded this weekend, whatever, that's fine. But I would expect him personally to get traded before the season starts, especially if they take a receiver in round one. But if they don't, then you can try rolling with Pickens, whoever they take early on, and Metcalf for a year, see how it goes. And then if you move him next year, okay. But what happens if he just becomes, has even more crash outs, tanks his value even more, and then you're going to look back and say, we probably should have traded him last year before, when his value was at least a little bit higher. Because even if they don't trade him, they are not extending him. 0% chance he gets extended. They paid DK Metcalf as soon as they acquired him. They're not. Pickens is extension eligible. They are not extending him. Trade Pickens to the Jaguars for a second and ETN. I don't think he's going to get that much in return. A second round pick and a player, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think, like I said, I think that the most that they'll get for him is probably a third. If I had to guess. The funniest outcome, actually, I shouldn't say funny. The most annoying outcome would be they do trade him, and they do get either a late second or an early third in return, but they trade him to the Chiefs, who have pick 62 and 66. I think that's, or 63 and 66. So that would be quite unfortunate. Like, oh, okay, yeah, they got a very early third round pick that is basically a second, but they sent him to the Chiefs. So I don't want that to happen. But I do think that the max that you'll get for him is probably a third. They need a running back one. Warren ain't it? Oh, I disagree there. I think that Jalen Warren's more than capable of being RB1. Dealt with a hamstring last year, but still averaged over 4 yards a carry. Averaged 5.3 yards a carry in 2023, when the offensive line was arguably worse than what it was this past year. So, no, I think that Warren's been the Steelers' best running back for the last 2 years. I know there's a lot of like Najee Harris defenders that watch the show. I think he'll fit in better with the Chargers. Don't think he's going to be a superstar by any means, but he's fine. But Warren's the better running back of those two. And I think that he'll do just fine. And I think they're going to draft a guy to complement him in the first 3 rounds. So I think DJ Giddens of Kansas State, that's kind of been my running back crush as to who I would like to see complement Warren in the backfield. But there's plenty of other guys that they can target. There's the Jarquez Hunter kid from Auburn. If they can somehow get Caleb Johnson from Iowa. But it feels like he's going to be gone in the 2nd round. So we'll see. He gets hurt every year and he fumbles. Well, everybody fumbles a little bit. What were his fumble totals, I wonder? Let's take a look at the Jaylen Warren numbers, just because I'm curious. And, by no means am I saying he's a perfect running back, but I think he's a pretty good one. Let's look at his fumble numbers last year, just out of curiosity. So last year, again, it's not going to show me fumbles. He had 2 fumbles last year. Fumbled twice. I can live with that. It's 2 fumbles. We'll be all right. Which he improved on from 2023 when he had 4. So I think he's fine. Not a top 10 back. Neither is Najee. Top 20, maybe. Somewhere in that 15 to 20 range. You can live with that. And I think with full-time carries, he's going to be able to showcase that a little bit, as well as being a receiver out of the backfield, which he's very good at doing. In terms of scrimmage yards, I think that he's going to have a very big year. Especially coming off a year in which he was dealing with a bum hamstring for a little bit. I think being 100% will certainly be good. I agree he's better than Najee. Okay, well, there we go. Found some common ground. Papa J says like and subscribe. Yes, please do that. That would be lovely. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. It's not just Steelers stuff. My national pod, the Pump Fake, which for some reason, I shouldn't say for some reason, and I don't know how they do this, was named one of the top 80 sports podcasts by Million Podcasts. That was very cool. So if you need any convincing to go listen to it or watch it on this channel, there you go. Go and watch it, please and thank you. Subscribe to the channel. Watch, all the Steelers coverage, all the national NFL coverage on the Pump Fake. What else is coming this year? Oh, I'm bringing back Watch the Tape. The first episode will be Josh Allen's best throws of 2024. So we'll do a few of those this summer. Bring back the top 10 list as well. Once draft season is kind of done and dies down, those will start coming. But since it's a busy time of year with draft season, I'm gonna hold off on that until afterwards. So almost done. And then once we have a little bit more free time, not talking about the draft, start doing stuff like that for the channel. So please do like, subscribe, do all of that. Not just for the Steelers stuff, which we'll continue doing, obviously, with Black and Gold Breakdown a few times a week. But yes, please do that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Do we possibly trade back with the Texans and still trade Pickens for late 2nd or early 3rd? That could be good. The thing with the Texans, though, is that they don't really have a whole hell of a lot to offer, do they? Let's look at the Texans draft picks this year. Let's look at what the Texans have. I'm going to pull up the mock draft simulator and select the Texans and see what they're working with. So the Texans this year, okay, actually they have a little bit more than I thought. I guess they got a decent return for the Laramie Tunsil trade. So the Texans have 25, 58, 79, 89. So if they say, hey, we'll give you 25 and 79 or 25 and 89 to move up a few spots if they really like a guy, then that would be good. I think getting another pick in the top 100, regardless, is a must if they're going to trade down. And then when it comes to that, I don't know. Do the Texans make sense? Because Nico Collins and George kind of do similar things. But I think in that offense with a quarterback like Stroud, that could work. So we'll see. But I don't know. I mean, if you're the Texans, they don't have many holes on their roster. Like Houston, their defense is very good. One of the better defenses in football. They just need receivers and offensive line help. Those are really their two needs, I would say. Everything else, pretty good. All three levels of the defense have stars. They got Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson off the edge, Azeez Al-Shaair in the middle of the defense, and then they just extended Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie and brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So defensively, the Texans are set. It's offensively where Tank Dell's going to be gone for the foreseeable future. Stephon Diggs went to New England, so they only got Nico Collins really at receiver. I would listen to the Texans, though. I think that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good team to throw in the mix of maybe being in. Even if they don't trade down, like if the Texans call and say, hey, we'll give you pick 79 for George Pickens, okay. Pleasure doing business with you. Good luck. Because I was surprised that they weren't in on the DK Metcalf trade. Or, if they were, they didn't get it done, obviously. But if they call Pittsburgh and offer pick number 79, that's something that I would be okay with. So I think that's a good shot from Eddie there on a team that could be in. You can replace 3 touchdowns pretty easily. I do want to say this, though. I don't dislike George, which I feel like without me saying that could come across that way. It just, the writing's kind of on the wall. When you trade for a receiver with a similar skill set and pay that receiver, you're not going to pay 2 receivers who do the same thing. But his on-field attitude and, stuff in terms of being late all the time, which was reported last year by, I think it was Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette that reported that he was constantly late, and that was really rubbing people the wrong way. Like, stuff like that adds up, man. And so I think that they're just kind of ready to move on. They got DK, who, again, basically does what George does, just better. And now they can deal Pickens for probably a 3rd-round pick, draft somebody early on with a different skill set than DK to be that what they hope to be the X receiver, and go forward with that group. That makes plenty of sense. Plus, we can get an extra draft pick. That's great. So, won't be surprised if it happens during draft weekend. If it does, I'll be back on here to talk to y'all about it, depending on where he goes, what they get in return, all that fun stuff. So again, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Be going live after round 1. It's going to be late. I know that, but if you guys are up and you want to chat about it, I will be going live on the channel and we'll be talking. So be sure to tune in if you're awake and you want to be part of the conversation. And again, please be sure to turn on notifications if you do subscribe. And please be sure to subscribe because that would make me very happy. I thought Drake Greenlaw was going to go to the Texans considering D'Amico Ryans has history with him. Yeah, I mean, anytime you got the previous connections, it's easy to, point to that connective tissue and say, okay, certain guy going here makes sense. Even so, this is as my light goes out there, this is a Texans team that is very loaded at the position and defensively. So I did think that was a good shout, saying that they could be a team to watch. Last one before we get out of here, since my light just went out. I just hope that we trade back to get a day 2 pick and draft a defensive tackle and a running back. I would assume a defensive tackle comes in within their first few picks, as will a running back. I would make that assumption. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. And again, whether we agree on this or not, I know I'm kind of taking victory laps just on a report and whatnot. But we all want the same thing at the end of the day, and that's for the Steelers to be good. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so we can talk about it all together throughout the week on the Black and Gold Breakdown. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow after round 1 of the NFL draft. Take care.